that is decent, that is good in terms of like your best hands like 9s, 10s plus, things like that. You want to be squeezing if there's dead callers in between because of the overlay that you're going to be getting from the pot.
Cruising down Interstate 80 and on to 580 and now on to Moana Lane, listening to the latest episode of the Crush Live Poker Podcast. You can always get 25% off of all CLPs, podcasts, and videos just by clicking on the link in the description below. I am streaking again, ladies and gentlemen. I've got to be honest, and I'll get to this announcement that I teased coming up at the end of the vlog, but it's been unbelievable. I was on about a $6,000 downswing about a month ago. Since that downswing came to an end, I have booked 15 wins in 16 sessions, and I am up this amount of money. It's been unbelievable. And when it comes to these kind of streaks, the key, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is to avoid going on winner's tilt. And it's been an issue that I've had in the past. And winner's tilt basically is that state of mind in which you think you cannot lose because you haven't been losing. And therefore you make bad decisions and then your game suffers as a result. So I'm going to try and avoid that today. But, you know, I got to say, with regards to this streak, I mentioned last time that I've been getting some great workouts in. Shout out to Sweat Fitness on South Meadows Parkway. And the fact that I've been getting in these really good workouts 4 or 5 days a week for the last month and a half, and the fact that I'm also on this epic streak is something that I just don't think is a coincidence. So let's head on in here to Peppermill and see if we can't make it 16 of 17 today. By the way, it's reached the point where I've been showing up at 11 a.m. more often than I used to, primarily due to the fact that if you don't get in here then, you may be looking at a 3-hour wait before the second game starts. Interesting lineup of guys. None of the big heavy hitters like Mr. Z and Mr. C were in the game, but you basically had an entire lineup of guys who are very successful in their careers and have made a lot of money, but don't necessarily have to be in the office Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Outside of one kind of newfound grinder who I don't really understand what his deal in life is yet, it was a solid and interesting lineup. The first hand would come when Under the Gun raises to 45 over the $10 sleeper straddle, and I make it 125 from the low jack with ace-king offsuit. Folds back to Under the Gun, who makes the call. It's always nice to 3-bet ace-king and actually hit the flop, and with 265 in, I may have hit it a little bit too hard here when it came out ace-ace-5, 2 spades. Still, he comes out firing, betting 125. I decided not to raise here, as I'm sure a lot of you would not in this very same circumstance. And with 515 in, the turn paired the 5, which is certainly not ideal for a variety of reasons, and now he checks. I had to decide between slow playing again or just making a small bet here. Ultimately, I decided on the latter option, hoping that he would call me with 8s or 9s, but when I put the chips into the pot, he snap folded. I then 3-bet pocket jacks to 125 and got called en route to a king-queen 8 board. Checked all the way to the river where I would make a $125 bet, hoping that would look bluffy, but my opponent tank folded his small pocket pair. We see some big pots with several players doubling up and others rebuying, so that enabled me to get another hockey puck into the game with the match the stack format. Under the Gun opens to 30 and 2 guys make the call. I have ace, 7 of spades on the button and call as well. So with 125 in, the flop is king, 6-3, 2 spades, giving me the nut flush draw. Cutoff bet's 85, and I'm certainly not going anywhere here. And with 295 in, the turn is an offsuit 5, giving me a gut shot straight draw to go along with the flush draw. The cutoff now fires 200, and once again, I call. So with 695 in, I do connect with the river, just not in the way I would have liked. Seems like that happens a lot. Anyway, I wasn't up against an opponent here that's very likely to fold top pair should I raise him, so it just goes check-check and I lose to king-jack. I would, though, get $100 of that money back on the very next hand when I 3-bet pocket tens and got 2 callers pre-flop before a couple of folds after the board came out. Middle position 1 straddles and MP 2 calls. Low jack raises to 50 and I have queens in the hijack and 3-bet 100 more. Folds back around to the low jack, who completes. So with 325 in the pot, the board comes out ace, 8-4, 2 clubs. He checks, and I just checked this one back on the ace-high board. Turn is a 9, and he checks again, so it's definitely time now to start value betting this hand, and I make it 125. And he barely thinks at all before calling. So with 575 in, the river is the king of hearts, and he checks for a third time. This definitely, I think, against this opponent, should have still been a value bet, but unfortunately, in the moment, I decided to just roll over my hand, and he mucked his. And apparently I still had a winning image, combined with no one having anything, on the next flop when I was able to call with King Jack and get 3 folds on an ace-high board with just my King High. The quality of this game then gets showcased when 3 players get $700 in pre-flop. One of them had the 7-3 off in the low jack, and he ended up hitting the board, and once it was run twice, that was good enough to chop it up. I'd lose back $250 getting bluffed in a marginal spot that I didn't get on camera, which was the start of a brutal couple of hours in which I'd lose back over half my winnings in a series of small pots that primarily consisted of me flopping draws, which bricked out. I'd returned from getting a tostada to find a 3-way all-in, and as you can see, premium hands were involved in that one. We didn't get a player sit down, and as I've mentioned before, I am the king of the ridiculous prop bet in our game. So I made a bet with Bugsy that before 3 p.m., this guy would have to utter the exact phrase, "I regret my fold." It was 2:08, and he had to say those exact 4 words. I had the under on 3 o'clock, and I cashed at 2:33, winning the usual amount straight out of Trading Places. Unfortunately, I wouldn't do a whole lot of winning in the game after that point. I did pick up ace queen of spades, and I would 3-bet that hand. The player on my left wasted no time 4-betting me. Generally speaking, ace-queen is not doing well in 4-bet pots in this game, and I didn't think this would be any different, so I just decided to give the hand up. All of the players that you saw in that hand, where those super premium hands were going at it in that 3-way all-in, left the game, as did several other players who actually give action, and the lineup basically completely turned over from one that was quite appealing to one that wasn't. I would have liked to have shot a few more hands for the vlog, but this recent epic run that I've been on has existed in part due to the fact that I've generally walked away when the games aren't very good, and this would be no exception. All right, pulling out of the parking lot here at Peppermill. It is too windy and rainy outside to record the outro video in its usual fashion. So I will just tell you here that I had planned to continue this vlog for at least a few more hours of poker action, but, well, the game just dried up. And I don't mean it broke, it's still going on right now, but it went from being a game with a lot of guys that give action and are really fun to play with to the exact opposite of that. So I am booking a $357 win and getting out of here. Another small win, but 16 of 17 certainly is not bad. I will not bitch about that at all, to say the least. And I will head home and get to the announcement you guys have been waiting to hear. All right, time to make what I hope is a cool announcement. I can pretty much guarantee you that none of you guessed what exactly the announcement was going to be. But we had a comment last week from someone saying, when are you going to do a vlog at some place other than the Peppermill? And I said, I really wish you'd waited a week to make that comment, because I've always had the desire since I started doing this vlog, and I know I'm not the first to attempt this, but I've always had the desire to simply drive all the way across the country and shoot a bunch of vlogs in the process. And I'm pleased to point out that next month, I'm going to make that happen. June 19th, I'm going to head out, hopefully with the return, if all goes according to plan, on the early morning hours of July 8th. I'm going to call it NV to AC. I've never been to Atlantic City. Would like to shoot a vlog there. And that's going to be maybe the final destination in terms of farthest away that I'm going to go. I'm considering also going up to the Boston area if I have time to do it. But depending on how things play out, it might just be Atlantic City and then down the East Coast a little bit and then kind of across the South coming back. That is my plan. Basically to start out going on Interstate 80 and cutting down to St. Louis, over to Cincinnati. Great action in Cincinnati. I remember I played there once before, up to Pittsburgh and then to Atlantic City. That is the hope as to how this trip is going to play out. There is one extremely unlikely thing that I'm not going to jinx that could have happened that week that could derail this plan and make me change things up. But aside from that, I think that's going to be the plan on the 19th. So it's obviously going to be the trip of a lifetime, and it's going to be just basically 3 straight weeks of non-stop poker playing, vlog editing, and driving. It's going to be a grind in that regard. But I've always wanted to make this trip. I've always loved going on road trips in a car. And the older I get, the more I've appreciated the solo trip. I was just telling my dad this, trying to convince him to do something along the same lines. It's just cool to go places by yourself. I don't care what anyone says. And yeah, it's cool to go with people as well, but to just have the ability to go alone and just make it about the trip, not the people you're with, I just think is something that's also a very cool thing. And that's what this is obviously going to be for me. I started doing this driving around just the state of Nevada, shooting segments for Channel 8, and to do it for the entire country is going to be something else. So I'll talk more about that in the coming weeks, but I just wanted to throw it out there that that's kind of the timetable I'm looking at, and maybe I will be seeing some of you along the way. That'll wrap things up for this edition of the vlog. Hit those like and subscribe buttons. You're definitely going to want to be subscribed coming up next month to check out the vlogs we do over the course of this trip. And we'll see you back here next time.